Hey everybody, welcome back to the Help Me Parent podcast. I'm Kiley, your host. It is with me, as always, Dr. Ellen Moore. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, it is cold today. It was 80 degrees last week. It is 50 degrees this morning.
Yay.
And Easter's 2 weeks away.
Less than.
Less than 2 weeks away. A week and a half away, really.
Yes.
I know you're a Thanksgiving person.
Yes.
Okay, so
that's my favorite holiday.
Where does Easter rank on the holidays for you then?
Maybe probably goes Thanksgiving, Christmas, then Easter.
Okay.
For me, just as far as the celebration. Mm-hmm. I'm not going with the meaning. Obviously, the meaning is significant.
Yes.
Of all of them. Uh-huh. But yes, I love Easter. I love one thing that we started a few years ago, because Easter is a big it's just a busy weekend for us, being in the church, all that's going on. We have a lot of extra services, so Saturday and Sunday. So by the time Sunday afternoon hits, we're spent.
You're not doing a big Easter meal.
No, or Easter egg hunt for at home or any of that. We're just kind of done at that point. So a few years ago, we started having our family meal and celebration on Good Friday, because we're off on that day. And it is so peaceful. It is one of my favorite days of the year, meals of the year. We just gather with family and friends. We have a nice meal, and then we usually sit outside, which I'm super happy about this weather.
Yes.
And then we always do communion, just sitting around the table, just remembering what the Lord did.
That's super fun.
Yeah.
Do y'all carry on any traditions from when your kids were younger? Have y'all always had traditions, or has this kind of become the new thing y'all do?
Doing it on Good Friday, just when we do it has changed more recently. I still pretty much do Easter baskets for everybody.
Yes.
I'm sure Easter egg hunts, we did those for the kids. We colored eggs and, boiled eggs, color them. Have you ever done it?
I have done that.
Okay.
Wait, actually, I don't know about the boiling part.
Okay.
That did happen. I was not in the kitchen, but I definitely remember dyeing them with like the water and like the little cups that coordinated with the colors.
Yes.
And then doing the designs on them. So I have done that.
Yes. So we did that with the kids, and then we'd do an Easter egg hunt just at home. Yeah. And I'm sure that will come back with grandkids.
Yes.
Yes.
That's so fun. Well, it's just you and I in the studio today.
Yay. We
put out on our social medias just asking parents for questions, because parents have questions and they want to know answers, And so we have a few questions today that we're just going to talk about. So we're just going to jump right into it.
Okay.
Alrighty. So the first, we're going to be kind of talking about emotions. That was a lot of the questions. Emotions that parents go through in the different stages, emotions the kids go through. We're not going to touch on my emotions today.
Okay.
That'll be later on.
Yeah. That's an episode all in itself.
Yes, it is. So first off, being a first-time parent, you're dealing with so many emotions yourself. How do you kind of navigate those while kind of staying sane, almost with a newborn? How do those emotions kind of come into factor?
Yeah. I think one thing that I would say about emotions in general, whether we're talking about the emotions of a parent or the emotions of the kids, is that emotions are very real. But they're not always true. They don't always speak truth to us. And emotions don't make a good boss of ourselves. And so I think that's a good thing to keep in mind for ourselves, and for our kids, is that the emotions, they are what they are. They're very real. But we have to look at them a little pragmatically sometimes, acknowledging them, which I will say as a mom, just my personality, I wasn't always great at acknowledging and giving room for the emotion before we dove into, okay, why are we feeling this way? And here's how we express it, and here's how we don't express it, all of that. But I do think that that's important to give room. That's something that I've learned and am still learning, honestly, for myself as well as with those around me. But we want to give room, some room. We want to acknowledge them, not act like we're not mad, not act like we're not sad. Sometimes sad things happen. Sometimes we're disappointed. Sometimes we're frustrated. Sometimes we're mad. And those are very real. But when I say that they're not always true, is we can feel like nobody likes us. But is that really true?
Yeah.
No. We can feel like we're all alone in this world. And while we acknowledge it, we give space to it, we have to always come back at our emotions with what is true. And we find what is true in God's word.
Yeah.
And so, but emotions can also be important indicators of some things. If we're feeling something, sometimes it's an indicator of something that we need to acknowledge or explore a little bit. Maybe it's something the Lord is wanting us to pay attention to and give some thought and prayer to. Sometimes it's an indicator of something we need to go to Him with, that maybe we're carrying all on our own. And then sometimes it's that we need to just figure out, with the Lord's help, the help of wise counsel, what an appropriate way to express the emotion.
With, like, of course, parents have emotions. They can get upset or something can really affect them. Do you let the kids see that? Or is it kind of like, if it's not a deep emotion, you do? If it is a deep emotion, you don't? How do you kind of balance that when there are kids into play?
Yeah, I think I don't, like a lot of things with parenting, there's no hard and fast rule, I don't think. I think it's really good to be real with our kids, and when we are, maybe we have a time that we're sad, there's been a loss in our life, and maybe it doesn't really affect the kid as much, but they see us crying, that's okay. And they'll say, "Mommy, what's wrong?" And you just say, "You know what? Mommy's a little sad right now." And depending on their age, how much you can go into. It might be for a little one, "Mommy is just a little sad today." And you know what? Mommy could use a hug. Something like that. Yeah. If they're a little older, maybe it's, "Mommy's a little sad because," and you give some, I lost a friend, or my best friend at work is no longer working there, or whatever it is. And so you can share to whatever degree is appropriate. And I think it's good too that in those times when we maybe lash out because of an emotion, something that we're experiencing and we haven't handled it well. Maybe we're angry about, something else, and we kick the dog, or, that we do something, we speak a little harsher than we normally would, or whatever. And the rest of the family or the kids are like, "What is going on?" Then when we realize what's happened, when we come back to say, you know what? I did not handle that well. I spoke way too harshly. I am so sorry. I was upset about something else, but I let my emotions take charge of that interaction, and I am sorry. Will you please forgive me? Yeah. And so to acknowledge it on the back end of not handling it well is also helpful, I think.
In those moments, do you think it's a great opportunity for your kids to learn compassion and empathy and forgiveness in those moments?
Absolutely. Yeah. It can all be teaching moments. Their emotions, our emotions, when we handle it well, when we don't handle it so well, they're all teaching moments, and use it as a great conversation starter.
Yeah. Yeah. How could you teach empathy and compassion and forgiveness and all the other emotions we could name? How do you teach those in everyday life or in a moment to where you don't, like obviously if you get mad and you react, that's where forgiveness can come into factor. Yeah. How else could you teach forgiveness?
I think when our kids when they're learning to acknowledge or recognize emotions that they're having, when they're learning to express those emotions appropriately, those are good moments for us to dive in a little bit and again, at age appropriate.
Yes.
To the right degree for the age that they are. But to, after the fact, talk about what happened, talk about why it happened, talk about what should have happened, and then make it right. And so I think when we're dealing with emotions or anything that sparks the need to forgive or to ask for forgiveness when we do something wrong, the purpose of forgiveness is always the restoration of a relationship to some degree. So whenever, if I was upset about something that happened at work, I come home, I take it out on my kids, I go back to them and say, here's what at the moment that I take it out on them and they feel that anger or whatever the emotion is, then that has affected our relationship. And so to circle back once I've calmed down, once I've realized what's happened, once I'm at a place that I can take responsibility for it and have a conversation, then I go to both restore the relationship first and foremost that's been damaged or at least affected.
Yes.
And then secondly, to use it as a teaching moment for them.
Yeah. Because I like the way you put that. Something could happen at work. But when you take it out like on your kids or your spouse or a friend, it affects that relationship when it wasn't even their problem in the first place. Yeah. And it's kind of a very humbling moment to be like, okay, this is what went wrong. Yeah. Wow. That's really an interesting point.
Yeah. So the point is always to restore the relationship. So asking for forgiveness, granting forgiveness is so that there can be closure to that event, that experience, and that's the point you're able to move on.
What do you do if, say, you try and restore the relationship, but on the other end, it isn't received well? Or maybe they are closed off and they're like, well, nope, you've done me wrong and I'm just done. What do you do? Because it can feel very hopeless at that point. Hopefully,
that doesn't happen with the parent-child example.
Yes.
But there may be times as the kids get older that it might take them a little while to be able to get there emotionally, to be able to grant that. And I think there's a couple of perspectives here. One, from our own perspective, that we've realized it, we've owned it, we've acknowledged it, we've done everything within our power to make it right, which is what the Bible talks about when someone has something, if you know someone has something against you, you go to that person. And as far as it is possible with you, live at peace with all men. So we go to them, we handle it the best we know how to do, and then we leave it there. That's our part. And so at that point, for that moment, we've done all that we can do. Now, I think what is also important is for us to remember that the other person may not be ready. And that's okay too.
That's so hard.
It is so hard because we want it to all be okay immediately because we're okay.
Yeah.
We've gotten to this point. But the same, allowing ourselves the time and space to get there, we need to do the same for the other person. Allow them the time and space to get there at their own pace. You just can't force it. And so at that point, if an older child, a friend, a spouse, says, honestly, I don't know if I can say that right this minute. Then we say, you know what? I understand that. Because we're the one that caused the problem.
Yeah.
Right? So we say, I understand. If and when you're ready, I'm here.
Yeah.
And then you just respond in love and preferring the other person, not then becoming offended that they didn't.
Lashing out, why can't you forgive me? I said I'm sorry.
Right. Right. Just giving them that space. And then, maybe a day or two later, you see if it's a good time to revisit it. Maybe you have to wait for them to bring it up. But obviously, the closeness of the relationship, you're going to handle it differently if it's a child or a spouse than a friend as far as the, I don't want to say the importance of the restoration, but I think you know what I mean. I'm not expressing that very well.
The significance of being a family together.
Somebody that you are with 24/7, you live with, is handled a little differently than a friend.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it with the older kids, I think that's what that question pertains to most is like older kids. Do you ever pull the, I'm your parent card? Is that just a not safe thing to do?
For forgiveness? Yeah, I wouldn't do that one.
No. Wouldn't do that.
At that point, you're not going to, I don't think it would be wise to say, to now play the parent card that, well, I said I'm sorry and you need to forgive me now, to an older child. Now, you might with a 3 or 4 year old who you're trying to use this as a teaching moment, and you have to give some words to them for how to do this. So to say, Mommy is so sorry that I was unkind to you. Will you please forgive me? And maybe they're just staring at you or no. And so then maybe you give them a minute or two and say, well, when somebody asks for forgiveness, when they tell you they're sorry, then your response is, I forgive you. Can you say, I forgive you? I forgive you. you hug, relationship is restored. So there is, at the different stages, there it is appropriate to teach them right words, right responses in these moments. And it feels kind of funny telling them to say, I forgive you to you. But it's easier when it's like a third party. But it's still an important lesson and a good teachable moment.
Yeah, that's great. Back to like the littler kids. A lot of times they are experiencing these emotions and able to, like you said, verbalize them. Like they're able to realize when they're angry or they're sad and not just, I don't know why I'm crying. I am sad. What do you do with like a kid who is just like constantly like, I'm sad or I'm mad? Like, and they constantly are just saying that. How do you navigate that?
Yeah. I think helping kids as they're learning to recognize and put words to emotions is really interesting. Our granddaughter's almost 2, and we were FaceTiming just this past weekend, and she's learning to put some words to some emotions. And so her mom and dad, our son and his wife, they were like, can you show Poppy and Happy your sad face? And she would do this sad face that was just so pitiful, but it was so cute. And it's cute them learning how to identify them, what it looks like on somebody's face, what it looks like on their own face, all of those things. But there's a very real and important piece of that we are teaching them to, when they're little like this, there are times that they are having a meltdown. They don't know why they're having a meltdown. And we have to, as the parents, have some discernment on, okay, is this throwing a fit because I said no? Or we're past lunchtime and they're hungry, or we've missed the window for our nap and they are just exhausted. They need to go to a nap. So it's a little bit of a scavenger hunt. And it's trial and error figuring out what those is. And after a while, we've got some good clues and indicators. But so us being aware that their expression at any given moment could be an emotional expression. It could also be a physical expression of hunger or tiredness or whatever. And we deal with, if it is a physical thing, feed them, let them take a nap. Chances are at that age when they wake up, they don't even remember it. That's fine. When they get a little older, let them take a nap. When they get up, then we revisit it. And at that point, whatever is age appropriate. So whether it's after the nap or maybe it's after they've calmed down for an older one, an elementary or whatever, then we're able to have a discussion. And I will say this for, again, whether we're talking about our kids or ourselves or a spouse or a friend, it's going to not be super helpful to try to have a discussion or a teaching moment in the middle of the emotion. We have to wait until it's calmed down, till it's addressed to the point of being able to be heard. And so I would keep that in mind. But you, I think I've gotten all off track from your original question, but you have these moments once that they are calmed down, then you begin to help them put some words to it and say, okay, what was that all about? What was, they got up from their nap and say, hey, let's talk about what happened. Do you remember what happened? Yes. And my brother or sister or my friend did this. And it made me mad. Or they did this and maybe they don't know mad. or sad or frustrated or whatever. And then we're like, tell me what happened. Well, they did this and then said this and then pushed me. Oh, did that make you feel sad? Did that make you feel mad? Were you frustrated because they didn't listen? And so we start helping give them some vocabulary.
Give them some prompts.
Yes. So they then can identify, oh, next time that's what it is. I'm frustrated. And so then they're able to put more and more words to it, and you're able to have more and more discussions. And then you talk about, okay, sometimes we do feel frustrated. How you handled it when you pushed them and said, you can't play with any more of my toys. Do you think that was the kind thing to do, even when we're frustrated? No. If you talk about it in the moment, they're going to say, yes.
Yeah.
So again, wait till everything's calmed down. Sometimes, the friend may have to leave and go home, or brother and sister might have to be separated. Once it's calmed down, you're able to address it, then talk about, okay, maybe that wasn't the best way to handle it. What could we do next time if that happened? What would be a kind way to address that situation? Someone was mean to you or destroyed the Lego creation that you worked so hard to create, and talk about, all right, what would be an appropriate response to frustration? What's an appropriate response to anger, to disappointment, whatever?
Yeah. I like how you put that, don't do it in the moment, the correction and the teaching moment. So I oftentimes feel it's easier to do that because you're in the moment. You don't have to revisit it later. Or sometimes you do think that's best. But in those moments, you kind of help diffuse the situation, get them calmed down, and then do the teaching afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then if this was your original question, a child just kind of gets stuck in an emotion.
Yes.
I'm sad, I'm sad, I'm sad. Then again, when there is a moment that's right, say, okay, let's talk about that. What does sad mean? And maybe that just means they're confusing that with tired. Or maybe they're confusing that with disappointed or whatever. And you kind of watch their actions before they're able to completely articulate it, or listen to what they are saying and see if you can give them some better words. And then if they are sad, you know what? When we're sad, that doesn't feel good. But you know what? We don't have to stay sad, because sadness, our emotions, aren't in charge of us. Who's in charge of you? Me. Sadness isn't in charge of you. And so you can tell sadness to go because you're in charge.
Yeah, I like that point. I could just imagine a kid walking around, I'm disappointed, I'm disappointed, I'm disappointed. That's all I can think about. I'm frustrated, I'm frustrated.
Yeah.
It's just cute when a 3-year-old is saying that. Okay, emotions with older kids, in the 12 to 18, the teenage years. Those emotions I feel like with like the whole like mental health term can take a really deep turn or a really sharp turn at times. How do you deal with like emotions then that seem to be more serious?
Yeah. I really think it's a lot of the same, is acknowledging the emotion, but reminding that the emotion isn't in charge. The emotion is real, but the thoughts that emotion is creating in your head may not all be true. And so we have to be able to name those thoughts and then combat those thoughts with what is true. So I think it's real important to have these conversations with our preteens and teens for really diving into, okay, what's going on? You don't seem like yourself. And pull them out of their room, or you go into their room with them, you know, if they are withdrawing or, whatever the indicators are that something's going on, that we're pursuing them and helping to verbalize. And there are times, we want to wait till the window is open, that they're in a talkative mood or just have an openness to sharing. But there may be times that this has gone on and you're like, okay, there's something going on. And so we need to talk about it now. And so just to be wise on picking those moments, but also just because the initial is no, I don't want to talk about it, to wisely press in there, not in a demanding way, but just say, hey, I'm concerned about you. I think this is important for you. And because I think this is one of the gifts of family and the opportunities for family to create these training grounds for us, is realizing that our emotional state doesn't just affect us. It affects the whole family. And you start with that realization that it's affecting the whole family who lives together. But then as you grow, you realize, oh, my emotions actually affect my community, my friendships, my relationships at work. My emotions have an effect. And so to deal with those emotions is not just for your own sake, but it's also for the sake of the family. Because if they're stuck in a sadness, in a depression, in an anger, that's not only not healthy for them, it's creating an unhealthy dynamic in the family that they are bringing to the family. But also, when we're not our best selves, we're not offering to the family what we need to be offering. And so it's this whole interplay that we're not an island in and of ourselves. The other thing I would say about that is that we want to acknowledge emotions. We want to express them appropriately. We want to handle them, make any tweaks to how we're handling them. We want to do that within the safety of trusted relationships and not on social media. That's not the best place to express emotion. It's not the best place to
get answers.
It's not the best place to process emotions, is not on social media, and it's usually not through text. I mean, you can reach out to people, you can give some encouragement, but if somebody's really struggling, it needs to be, if at all possible, a face-to-face relational thing. Phone calls might work. But I think giving them, just using family, using our relationships as a training ground for all of the ramifications of emotions is really, I think that's one of the gifts that the Lord gave us.
With the wise counsel, you seek that as a parent on how to navigate this. And then how could you help your kids start to find that wise counsel? Where does that come from?
Obviously, as parents, we want to be their first go-to. I think that that's important. I don't think that that's a pride thing, and it's not at all saying that we always have the answers. But the Lord did give us these kids. He put them intentionally, purposefully in our family. So we do have something to offer the kids. And especially if we're followers of Jesus and asking for his wisdom and his help, we can trust that he's going to help us speak into their lives. Having said that, we also know that our kids need other voices. And there's a lot of research on kids who are thriving in really in themselves, being the best version of themselves, but also in their relationship with Jesus as followers of Jesus, that at least having one other trusted voice in their life besides their parents makes a huge difference. So we don't, as parents, we don't want to outsource all of our responsibilities as parents because we are the ones responsible for them. So we're not outsourcing to the church. We're not outsourcing to school. We're not outsourcing to coaches. We're not outsourcing to doctors, to therapists, whatever. All of those people are great and we want to use them, but we're not abdicating our role and giving it totally over to those people.
Absolutely.
And then as they get older, we help them to realize, and you're like, okay, it seems like you're having a hard time talking to me about this. Is there somebody else that you would like to talk to? Is it dad instead of mom, or vice versa? Is it grandma or grandpa, an uncle? Or it could be somebody at church. A leader at church, a small group leader, whatever. Could be a coach, a teacher, but you are helping them to figure out, and you say, would you like to talk to somebody else? Yes. Okay, let's talk about who that might be. Well, I'll just talk to my 13-year-old friend. Well, that's great to have a friend that you can talk to, but do you think they're going to be able to really give you wise counsel and advice on how to handle this? Maybe, maybe not. So who else is someone? And you just have those conversations and help them discover those people. Sometimes they're having trouble discovering them on their own, and you have to sometimes take the lead and create some of those opportunities.
Well, this episode has flown by. So to wrap up, kind of dealing with your emotions as a parent, you're going through changes all the time with your kids. I think an emotion that can seep in at times, you can, whether you're a single parent or you're married, loneliness can seep in. How do you kind of deal with that? I definitely feel like it's from the enemy to feel like you're lonely, whether it's in the family, in a marriage, in a child-parent relationship. How do you deal with that?
Yeah. I think like all the other emotions, we have to ask ourselves, okay, I'm feeling lonely. I'm feeling like I am all alone in handling this. And then to ask ourselves, is that true? Is that emotion true? Am I really all alone? Number one, if we're a follower of Jesus, we're not alone. We've always got his help and the help of the Holy Spirit. There are times that in addition to that we need, I've heard somebody say, we need Jesus with skin on. We need somebody else who we can touch and see and say, okay, I am not all alone. I'm feeling that way. Who is somebody I could reach out to? And maybe it's, you know what? I haven't even told my spouse this is how I'm feeling. Maybe it starts there. Or maybe if you're a single parent, maybe it starts with a friend, a parent, a sibling, whoever, and to say, hey, and just realizing this is how I'm feeling. You know what? maybe I just need coffee with a friend. I'm going to get a babysitter and just for a couple of hours, go be with somebody to remind myself that I'm not all alone. So I think it's just acknowledging the emotion, realizing that the emotion doesn't always speak truth to us, and the emotion doesn't make a good master.
Yeah.
It's not the boss. It doesn't have to be the boss. And asking the Lord's wisdom on how to combat it with truth from his word, truth from a friend, or time with someone.
Yeah. It's so funny how you can teach your kids something, and it also applies to your life.
Absolutely.
You teach them as toddlers, as little kids, as older kids, and then you're like, oh, this also applies to me.
Absolutely.
Well, this was a great chat we had. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And just remember that you can parent and we can help.